program. Today we have a very interesting session for you. We'll be discussing sources of capital amid the COVID-19 pandemic. And our focus will be looking at how can business owners or entrepreneurs in the built environment profession look at ways of financing their startups or their businesses and actually stay afloat amid the crisis that we are in. And we have a very good panel of speakers before you who I'll be introducing later on to give us some opening remarks. I'll be a moderator for this afternoon. My name is Wilson Mugambi. I'm an architect, entrepreneur, and also Vice President of the Architectural Association of Kenya. So, karibu sana, Architect Ngure Njendu.
Okay, thank you very much, Wilson, for those remarks. I think we still have people who are coming onto the call, but even before, as we do so, as mentioned, my name is Ngure Njendu, President of the Architectural Association of Kenya. And today's session will really be moderated by Wilson, and we have a wonderful panel of speakers who we're excited about and really just going to hear about finance. I know with most architects particularly, we tend to design and not like to deal with the office operation side of things, but to run a successful business, I think it is necessary to understand the money bits. So we are excited to have this session to discuss that. I do want, even as we begin, just to recognize that there was a tragedy yesterday and one Kenyan life was lost. In Kericho, where a building collapsed, sunk. And I do just want us to recognize just 10 seconds of silence in remembrance of that. So if we could just have 10 seconds of silence. Okay, thank you very much, members. So with those few remarks, I think I can just maybe touch on AAK, but AAK is really a built environment association that has chapters that range the whole range of built environment professionals. So we have architects, planners, quantity surveyors, engineers, construction project managers, landscape architects. So it is really a vibrant association, one of the premier associations for built environment professionals. We're excited to partner with Kenya Bankers Association and Inuka on this conversation, providing value to our members. We know these are not normal times, and we hope that this conversation will be useful to our members moving forward. So with those few remarks, karibuni sana, let's engage, let's ask questions, let's make sure that we keep the conversation going. And back over to you, Wilson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ngure, for that introduction. As I had mentioned, we are looking at ideally the sources of capital for our businesses. We're in a very uncharted waters, so to speak, in terms of where most of the businesses are. And majority of the built environment professionals ideally run micro to small medium enterprises. So we thought, why not reach out and partner? And I think this actually came up from the Inuka Enterprise Program, because a key mandate is to empower micro and small medium enterprises, which our members and also our fellow professionals, engineers and the like actually fall under. So by way of introduction, I would like to introduce the speakers who will be with us today. And I would like to start off with Elizabeth Wasuna by way of introduction. I'm just going to introduce the speakers and then they'll say hello. Then from there, I'll proceed with the program. So Elizabeth is the Business Banking Director of Absa Bank Kenya, PLC. And in this role, she's responsible for commercial banking, transactional banking, Islamic banking, vehicle and asset finance, agribusiness, and SME teams. So you can see she's right up our alley. Under the SME, she is spearheading Women in Business proposition in partnership with ITC, which is International Trade Center under She Trades. Her career spans over 20 years, having started off as a bank trainee, and she has worked for two top-tier banks in different capacities. And most recently, she was the head of banking standards, of business banking at Standard Bank Malawi, sorry about that. And she holds a Bachelor of Science in International Business Administration and a Master's in Business Administration with emphasis in marketing and strategic management, both from USIO. She's also a member of the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce, where she serves as a patron member, and is also a member of KEPSA and the American Chamber of Commerce. Elizabeth, say hi to everyone.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Elizabeth. With us, we also have Nuru Mugambi, who shares my name. You can see Mugambi is such a great name. I will brag a bit about that. Nuru is a community activist, and she's passionate about creating shared value within the banking industry. And in 2012, she became the sustainable finance champion in the banking industry. And I think further in her cap is that she's actually been to the White House and met our very own President Barack Obama. We will say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, ladies. So before I let Elizabeth proceed with her presentation, I had a very brief outlook as to ideally what the built environment professionals look at in terms of capital. So there are ideally three sort of phases or three aspects to look at. And one of which is the startup, because when you're starting up, of course, you need to have some starting capital. And ideally, this handles things like registration, licensing, acquiring office space, and even equipment, because, for instance, professionals in the built environment actually have to have a very big capital output in terms of the kind of computers they buy, the plotters, and the like. Another thing you look at is the working capital, the operational, and which has actually been grossly affected by this pandemic. You look at the administrative costs, utilities, salaries, even marketing where it applies, and also general maintenance of the space and also the equipment. Another thing that I think most people are very not in tune with is the living expenses, because as an entrepreneur or business owner, you also have to look at the lifestyle, how you're going to sustain it. And under the current circumstances, I'm sure several people have had to adjust. We've had stories, and we've even had sessions whereby people talk about how they've had to scale down their operations, cut costs in terms of staffing, and maybe even reduce their rents by maybe taking up smaller spaces. So this sudden shift in the last 2 to 3 months has really brought a lot of ideas and challenges for people as to how they can adjust to it. So without further ado, I think I would like to invite Elizabeth to give us her presentation, which focuses primarily on business continuity, especially amid the kind of situations that we are in. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Elizabeth as she makes her presentation. Karibu, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much, Wilson. I appreciate your introduction as well. So, and thank you so much for having me today. And really for me today is just to have a conversation with yourselves so that we can see how to better know how to manage the environment that we are in. As a bank, we are very keen to make sure that we can support as best as we can, because remember, in all honesty, we are also involved. We also feel the pain of the COVID pandemic, and therefore sharing between ourselves and the association, as it were, would really, really go a long way in being able to provide our members, to provide our employees with the best way forward. So even as I was having a conversation with Nuru and Mogore, I know they gave me a bit of background about, the association that you sit in, and it's an interesting, built environment professionals, as you call yourselves. It's a wide spectrum, and therefore, even as I go through my presentation, I'm hoping that, for one, I should be able to provoke your thoughts around how to manage in this COVID environment. It should be able to help you better understand what other industries have done, and to keep you updated with what it is, give you an avenue to have conversations around it. It should provoke you to think about the partnerships that you have, and that you could partner better. It would be able to ensure that we can build solid relationship with the banking fraternity, and just to know how to have those conversations. We aren't experts for sure in your environment. That is why you are in the environment that you're in. We are more experts in what you call the banking field. So that is the investments and the savings piece. So the more we interact, I think the better it is we're able to understand each other, to know how we can come up with better solutions, products, financing. Sometimes it's, as we go around Kenya, because we have 85 branches across Kenya as ABSA. We find that not everybody is looking for financial information. Sometimes they're also looking for non-financial support. And so as a bank, we feel very strongly that when we have these conversations, such as provided on this forum, we better prepare you for the environment that we find ourselves. And so I'm really happy to have this conversation with yourselves today. Key takeout from these conversations, as far as I know, or as far as I would like it to be, is to give you insight, as I said, in our own thinking, to provoke various conversations amongst yourselves and with the organizations that you work with, the different banks, and perhaps give you an opportunity to have conversations with ABSA as well. Open forum for continuous conversations. And so as a result of that, as I present on the business continuity matters, business continuity plans, as we call them sometimes, I think it's important just to give you an opportunity, and I'm sorry if I have to repeat some of the things that you already know, but it gives you an opportunity to review those things that you hold dear as far as your business is concerned, give you a different twist, and encourage yourselves as we move forward. You're not in this alone. For sure, there are organizations, there are stakeholders that are looking to support you, and therefore, thank you for giving me this opportunity to have that conversation with yourselves. I think as I start this conversation, for me, the key word that keeps coming through every so often, even before I start on the agenda, is the word disruption. We are so in a disruptive environment. And I think talking a bit about what disruption means, and I had to go into the dictionary to try and figure out what does the dictionary tell us as far as the meaning of this word disruption. And it says to change the traditional way that an industry operates, especially as in a new and effective way. And as I read through that explanation, it just hits me that in a lot of ways, we in industries, and I think this is something for the banking fraternity as it is in your area, we are so used to our own structured traditional ways. We almost feel that this, the environment and the businesses that we've run has moved from generation to generation. What tends to change is simply the technology around managing it, but the traditional ways, the structured ways that our environment, our businesses run are very, very handed down from generation to generation. And in that very, very explanation lies the reason why when we are disrupted, when things change with that we do not expect, we find that we struggle. We struggle in a lot of ways, and we are very disrupted in our personal environment, in our work environment. Everything that we do around us is really disrupted. When I was thinking about speaking to yourselves as in your environment, some of the things that came through to me, and I experienced them also at the bank, is projects stall at all stages. Things that you thought were going to, work as clockwork because we are very structured in the way we work. We know that it's come January, come February, we're going to start our project. That is not happening anymore. Approvals that you had already submitted your proposals, those approvals are not forthcoming, or a straight decline has come through. Something that you've done for years and years, taking your proposals and getting approvals, those are not coming through. That is really disruptive. Conversations that you had started with key stakeholders, those have also been disrupted because people are not there. People don't care really to have these conversations now because perhaps they're not in their offices. Perhaps they are out there trying to look and see how they can themselves survive. Some of them have been unfortunately hit by the COVID virus themselves. Some of them are just looking to survive, basic survival. So I know in your environment, in different ways, there's been a lot of disruption. Another thing that comes to my mind as I was thinking about your environment is value chains are broken. Some of them temporary, others of them are going to be long-term. And when value chains are broken, these are relationships that you have built over years and years. Honestly, it is extremely disruptive. When you look at from an engagement perspective with banks and to ourselves, financial support is withdrawn sometimes. And as a result, you ask yourself, how am I going to take care of my expenses? How am I going to stay above water? And unfortunately, all these things that come to hit us actually create mental fatigue, mental issues. I mean, I've seen clients who have gone into depression, people who have, stopped thinking in structured ways that we've known them to think. I mean, it is totally disruptive. And therefore, it is important and so critical that this conversation around business continuity, knowing what a disruptive environment, the disruptive environment that we're in, it is so critical that we have a business continuity conversation that speaks to the agenda that we've tried to put, for ourselves. So even in this disruptive environment, one of the questions, two questions that came to mind: could we still be able to work? Could our business be able to withstand this pandemic? I know right now we're in it. We don't know how long it's going to last. And so in my mind, how do we then ensure that we move forward? And therefore, as I was preparing and hopefully into the next slide, I was trying to put across the business case for ensuring that each and every one of you has a business continuity plan. Now, why is this a critical piece? Because this piece, believe me, more than anything else, is a conversation that we have also at the banks. And this piece has become such a key conversation to all our customers as they come in and take the 3 months moratorium facilities that we're providing, all the way up to 12 months moratorium periods. These are things that we're asking them: how are you going to continue? What is your plan around continuing your business? So I thought it was important, and I think with the collaboration with your team, what is the business case for our business continuity planning? Something that some of you may have, some of you may not have. So just going through it, why is it important to have one? And the 5 key things that came through, it is a vital piece for your business, because if you do not have a plan, it is sure planning is a plan to fail. And this plan is a living document, because it keeps on being revived. It keeps on being reviewed, because every year, every quarter, whatever it is your business decides, you need to consistently review this to ensure that it provides you with a financial safety net for your business across difficult periods and into good periods. Having a business continuity plan also ensures that your customers are confident with the fact that you are structured, that the fact that you have planned through. It provides assurance to your customers, your clients, that you have analyzed the threats, you have done a SWOT analysis of your business, and therefore they're working with a reliable partner. They're confident that you know what you're doing across board. And this is unfortunately during unfortunate times as we find ourselves, and into good times. So business continuity, I know, is normally invoked, especially in tough times like this. And to be honest, nobody would have expected as we began the year that the coronavirus pandemic would have affected us to this level. So sometimes, even as we have our plan, it keeps on having to be reviewed consistently to ensure that it can expand itself to cover the incidences that you're going through. The other piece that is important is because you have to have a moral and formal authority. In your position as professionals, you need to be able to advise your clients on how business can continue in tough environments. And a lot of them will be looking to you and saying, how come my project is stalling? And you need to be able to explain to them that these are the triggers, these are the things that I needed to hold true for me to continue. This is my backup plan, and therefore have a moral, formal authority to tell them, this is my business continuity plan. It may take a little longer, it may be on time. This is how we are looking at it moving forward. Without a plan, like I mentioned at the beginning, really, it's difficult. Another case for business case is to have a resilient nature. Believe me, it is the environment we're in is extremely, extremely disruptive. And the concept on continuity starts to apply and checks in when something goes wrong, as it has gone right now. So having a business continuity plan enables us to have a resilient culture, because at least you have a view of what are the steps that you need to take to move forward. And finally, your brand value and reputation. Having a plan helps you preserve your carefully crafted brand and value, and ensure that you can keep your reputation during these tough and difficult times. I think the purpose for me, as I go into just building the case around this piece, is what is the purpose of a business continuity management or plan, as some people tend to call it? And there are 4 things that come to my mind, and I thought it would be important to share with yourselves. One is to ensure continuity in time-crucial business services. That is so critical for yourselves. Number 2, to safeguard the corporate assets, because each and every one of you, whether at a small level or a big level, you need to be able to safeguard your corporate assets, even as we go through this difficult environment. 3, to minimize impact of an incident such as that we find ourselves in. We must find ways as business professionals to minimize the impact of incidences such as the COVID environment and see how we can survive in the long term. And finally, to really train your staff, because they are key components. You cannot be able to execute any of these plans and management continuity plans if you do not have staff that are well versed with what it is that your plan is all about, and to train them continually to ensure that they can support your business moving forward. I think to the next slide. What is at stake here? And it's a reality check. It's a real reality check. Just talking a bit about our environment, 40% of our SMEs, our SME business, are not going to be able to reopen. Up to 90% of businesses fail within the first year of operations. And if in an environment like this, you can imagine the effect it's going to have on us. I know the CBK governor recently mentioned the fact that 75% of small businesses risk failure. And this is a reality to businesses that you run. And this is a reality for businesses that we also support. And so this is really what is at stake. And it's important that we cannot then leave our businesses open to the vagaries of the weather. And therefore, a business continuity plan becomes very, very critical. Disruption takes a variety of forms, as I mentioned before. And some of them are really dependent on, the stability of organization. But first and key is the mental anguish. Some of us have had to work from home, and that is also quite disruptive. All of us being cooped up, sometimes we've been used and we always laugh in the office and saying, we were so used to escaping in the morning to run to our offices and then coming back to work, to the home at the end of the day, just in time to eat your dinner, watch a bit of TV, perhaps say hi or good night to your children, and then off to bed. Today, we're having to spend a lot more time in that environment. And some of this is really causing a lot of anguish and causing a lot of push and pull. And therefore, it's a reality that even in your industry, we have to be able to acknowledge and deal with. We have displacements and temporary of our accommodation. We're not able to work in our offices anymore. Sometimes we're not even able to move from one area to another. We are locked up in Nairobi. We're locked up in Mombasa. We're locked up in different areas, and we're finding it very, very disruptive. Sometimes we're not able to access our office spaces. So these disruptions are so real for us today that we have to be able to manage. Lost revenues and unexpected operation costs. Again, because we are not able to perform, we're not able to get paid, and as a result of that, the costs are not moving. We have to still pay our employees, and this is a reality that as we move forward, we have to be able to deal with the reality of our situation. And so, even as we as a bank thought about this, because we are in it, I'm going to share a little later about what we did as a bank and what we in our disruptive form, what we've come up with as key things that we've started off with, that I'm happy to share with you later, so that you can be able to see as an organization what having a business continuity plan helps you deal with very quickly, as others are still struggling to figure out which way forward. What does it mean? But just to start off with, I'll go to the next slide and talk about how do you develop your business continuity plan, and what are the key steps that we speak to. And just as an overview and to our slide and to the slide, when I talk about step 1, I'm talking about the risk assessment. What kind of risk assessment have you done in your environment? How have you identified the potential hazards? Have you talked about the likelihood and severity of these hazards? Have you talked about determining the risk level that these hazards then invoke on your business? And are you able to assess these risks and then also share them with stakeholders? Now, why do I say this? Is because some industries, as is sitting in the banking environment, are much better than others in terms of risk assessment. And some have been able to proactively approach the banks and explain to us the risk that they see, even before we are asking them as businesses what kind of risks that we see in their areas. Now, why do I also say this? Because in the banking industry, it is so critical for us to look at the risks that each and every business that approaches us for financing, and each and every business that we support in terms of investment. We need to see the risks and then look and see how have we mitigated those risks. And sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, we're not experts in your area, you're the experts. And you are the ones who are wearing the shoe, and you know how the shoe pinches you. So therefore, having a serious risk assessment on an individual level, because I do realize in the association you have individuals, you have corporate businesses, and then you have the association as an umbrella body. When you have a risk assessment view in the environment that we have, in the COVID environment, you're able to assess this risk very carefully and come and approach the stakeholders like the banks and tell us, look, this is the situation that we find. And even as our members approach you, these are the risks and this is how we hope to mitigate them. Or can you help us mitigate these risks? And that is an engaged environment that we find ourselves. I'm giving you an example of an industry that has really tried and mastered this and done it pretty well as far as the environment is concerned. We've had a very disruptive environment for the flower industry, as a lot of you will understand. Flowers, remember, are grown in the various areas, and mostly in Naivasha, Nakuru, and other areas in Kenya. And remember, they really depend on being able to transport their flowers into the Nairobi environment and get them to the airport and then send them for auction. And most of the flowers are really bought out by clients outside the Kenyan environment. So you can imagine when a close down or a shutdown like what we've seen happening, how much it has affected them, how they've had to literally close down, because again, social distancing is not something that you can actually effect immediately in a farm environment, and how packed they've been in their areas. So the reason why I share this is because as a unit, as an association, they were able to come to us and say, look, this is one of the areas this is one of the industries that is really, really disrupted by COVID-19 pandemic. And therefore our members are suffering because of 1, 2, 3 things. And therefore we need you to think beyond what you probably think is the right moratorium period. So whereas we would come up and say, we are giving you 3 months moratorium period, because that is what we thought initially was going to be effective for you to be able to get back into your business domain. We find that giving them perhaps even longer period, and that is why we said we've extended it up to 12 months because now we understand that they also have, they have different timings, they have different peak periods, and therefore by understanding their environment, we've been better able to support them in their conversations around restructure and how to continue their business moving forward. Impact analysis is a key piece as well. Identify the direct and indirect impacts. Some of us, and this is really speaking towards an ecosystem conversation for your business. A lot of your businesses are dependent. They're really dependent on others to be able to perform. And when we look at, in a banking fraternity like we do, and I'm going just to share a very quick example, the impact for us when we looked at our immediate environment was knowing that SMEs who provide us with services, they provide us with distribution, they provide us with different things for us to be a bank like ABSA in this environment. They too were disrupted. And therefore, how do we support them? And how do we proactively support them in being able to manage their environment? And one of the key things we came up with is that, one, we must be able to pay our suppliers. We must be able to pay them as quickly as possible. Yes, our contracts speak to 30 days. Sometimes it speaks to 60 days. And I think this is something that you also go through. You know, some of your suppliers talk about 30 days, 60 days. But for us, we made a decision as a bank to say that for all our SME suppliers, we are able to pay them within 14 days for those that provide us with their LPOs, their local purchase orders, so that we can help them turn around their cash and move forward. And for those who asked us for who we owed less than 1 million shillings, we were then able to say, quickly, instead of waiting for 30 days to pay them, let's quickly pay them back within 7 days. And this is just by being able to look at the impact analysis of the COVID environment to our value chain, to our ecosystem. Sometimes we have to plan to prepare for this disruption. And this is very difficult, and it comes with a lot of experience, exposure. And therefore, it is important to to look around and plan and see how disruptive things like the COVID environment could be. And I think this is, for us, and I think for a whole generation, it's been one of the worst disruptions that we possibly could have, because it has hit us on so many fronts. And therefore, being able to plan around disruption is key. Implement those, because as soon as an incident occurs, we need to be able to have conducted training, because it may be an opportunity to train, yes, but you needed to have a plan, because in that plan, the training piece comes out. It doesn't come out as an emergency. It must be, scenarios that you've exercised, scenarios that you've played back and forth, scenarios that you've read through, so that you can figure out what is it that you really need to do, and then consistently review that plan every so often. And therefore assess. The final one is to be able to assess. And when this disruption occurs, reflect on the experience and update your plan accordingly. Plans are not meant to be static, they're meant to be fluid, and therefore making sure that you can have these conversations as a fluid every so often really, really, really makes a difference. Just on that slide, one of the key things I thought it was important just to pull this slide together and have this very structured way, because I know we are very structured in the way we approach things, is to look at 4 key things as being phases in business continuity planning. 1, risk assessment, as we've mentioned. Number 2, make sure that in the impact analysis, you have a recovery strategy. And this comes the whole lot of questions. This is a conversation on business continuity. Believe me, it is a whole degree. So what I'm just trying to do is, again, to provoke thoughts around what your continuity plan needs to have, and therefore help you better prepare in your conversations with financial institutions, with your stakeholders. When we talk about our recovery strategy, what are the things that we're talking about? Do you have disruptions in terms of your buildings, your systems, the people, the regional disruptions as we've had? What does the pandemic mean for your workforce? These are things that you need to incorporate especially in your recovery strategy. The 4th phase would be around your business continuity plan, and how do you recover and how do you deal? So in the banking fraternity, in the banking industry, and especially in ABSA, we've had to recover very quickly. Assessing the bank was not something that we could do for all our employees, and therefore being able to provide them environments to work at home became something that we needed to do. And that, in our recovery plan, the question was, does everybody have the tools to be able to work from where they are? Do they have connectivity? Do they have laptops? Do they have phones? Do they have airtime for those who would struggle with some of those? Do we know where they are? Can we contact them? Because even in that, as I mentioned earlier, the mental anguish would come in, and are we able to support them in those conversations? And finally, plan to evaluate and consistently review that conversation. So those would be the stages that we speak about in developing our continuity plan. I think I'll go to the next slide. Now, when I speak a little bit about ABSA, and I know it's a whole conversation as well, I thought it would be important to just explain what our response has been to the COVID-19 disruption. We've had to, for instance, and I think I've mentioned this already, provide loan relief and repayment holidays to our clients across board, whether it's the businesses, corporates, individuals. We've had to look at providing them with 3 months repayment relief, which is extendable, like I've mentioned, over to 12 months. These conversations are made a lot easier when we have engagements upfront. As they take their holiday repayments, they are able to speak to us and explain to us what their scenario looks like. Some of them have had to close shop completely. So therefore, even as we look at these repayment holidays, we're then saying, perhaps they're not even able to meet the interest or principal payments. So we've had individual conversations, we've had industry conversations, we've had these to be able to provide them with this particular response. Even as we go through, we've found that a lot of them are not able to, a lot of our customers are not able to move from where they are. So we've had to go digital, we've had to go cashless. Remember, we have 85 branches open. And some of these branches, quite honestly, if we were waiting for people to come into the branches, it would be a sad state of affairs, because many people are not able to move from where they are. you know, fearing they can be able to pick up the virus from wherever it is. So we've had to go digital and cashless in the way we approach things. And in that effect, then we knew that it was going to increase some of their costs. And cost, as you all know, is the key thing that we had to contain. We've had to think about how to reduce our costs to keep our business going, yet at a reduced cost. So we felt as a bank important to provide a waiver on some of the fees to enable customers to go digital. In terms of the account to M-Pesa and Airtel money transactions, on our Timiza platform, we've also looked at those. PesaLink is you know, waiver of fees in that area, and our Absa Integrator, which is our business online transaction platform, we've had to waive fees so that we can encourage customers to continue their businesses without necessarily thinking of how much more the fees is going to impact their business. Now, why do we do this as a bank? Is because if you take a short-term look and say, look, we want to really push on and making the most money out of this situation, we're not looking as partners, as in the long term. So it is important for us to say, can we reduce the fees to ensure that our businesses don't shut down altogether? But can we support them in the long term? We have then said, can we provide rewards also, encouragement for those who are then able to go cashless? Because the more they get cashless as well, the better it is that we are able to contain the pandemic across board. And so the waiver on some of the payments, the waivers of the fees is one, but also encouraging people by giving cashbacks. And so as you use our card, we're able to give you a cashback so that, you know, it's our small way of contributing towards costs as far as our businesses are concerned. I had already mentioned the early repayments that we're giving for our suppliers and our distributors, our support team, and especially geared towards the SMEs, because in enabling them to turn around their cash quickly, we are able to support their businesses. Some of the key things, the areas of focus as a bank we've been able to bring forth are, and I think this is the point at which I then share some of the key things that we've looked at as a bank that has helped us turn around and really try to endear ourselves to the environment, to show them that we really care and to know that we are partners for the long haul. First and foremost, I think we've discussed some of the things, making it easier for our customers to cope in a financially challenged environment as we find ourselves. And all in all, we've been able to restructure a total of about 50 loans for about 50,000 customers, or rather loans, 50,000 customer loans across our business, totaling to at least about 53 billion. And this is cut across the scheme loans we provide, the mortgage loans, which is directly affecting the businesses that you support, personal loans for some of you as well, SME loans, and also corporate investment environments, businesses. And so as a result of that, we've had to restructure loans up, you know, not short of about 53 billion shillings, and continue to do that because that is our commitment to ensure that we, in the short term, give you reprieve and give you an opportunity to turn and plan and make sure that you can sustain your business moving forward. Apart from that, and part of our business continuity plan as well, is to be able to support the environment that we operate in. And therefore, supporting our frontline warriors, our medical workers has become a critical piece for us as a business. Now, why do I say this? Because if we do not have medical workers, and some of you might be thinking, why do we need to go outside? But if we don't have medical workers who can support us in as far as our health is concerned, by being able to provide them with protective clothing, by being able to provide them with the masks that we look ourselves, by being able to fund the medical equipment that they're looking to be able to support us better. How else can we say that we are socially responsible for the environment that we work in? So it is one thing to think about yourselves, but it's also important that, you know, in your business continuity plan, you look at the people who are critical and key to your environment, to your business, to be able to then support them as well. So that is the second piece. The third piece for us is supporting the infected and affected fellow Kenyans, because I don't think as a business, as ABSA, we can purport to say that we're a business where we can do it alone. We need supporting the infected and affected fellow Kenyans has become key. And how we have then said, one, we must make a contribution. And to that end, we've made a contribution of about 50 million shillings to the COVID-19 Emergency Response Fund, and to support the government in being able to support the efforts in being able to fight the pandemic. Another thing that we've been able to do in that piece is to also provide support in the mental field. We have partnered with Minet to be able to provide a toll-free line to have conversations with our staff, with people, to be able to give them a counseling. This is so critical, like I mentioned earlier. This mental anguish that we speak about has caused a lot of damage, and it continues to cause, if we do not put it in check. After the pandemic, we still have people who are going through mental anguish. And to have a sales force or a staff force and employees who are able, we need to provide them with that. And so to that end, we have partnered with Minet to be able to support us to provide mental support and mental conversations to support that piece. Beyond that, we're saying for continuity of our business, we have, as a business, said we don't need all our employees to come to work. We have then given them an opportunity to work from home. We have reduced some of the working hours for the environments that are exposed. We have then moved on to the online platforms so that we encourage people, our staff, and also the employees and also our clients to work offline. So these are some of the things that we are looking at always proactively to be able to support. What are the specific initiatives for SMEs? Other than providing them with relief and providing them with less fees, we definitely know that SMEs are key to be able to support our environment. And as a result of that, it is important, it is so critical that over and above the fact that, I know Nuru, my good friend Nuru, is going to talk about the Inuka and some of the initiatives that they have, even as a bank, to be able to come to us and have conversations so that we can be able to share with you the various products and services that we can provide you during these difficult times. But over and above the financial support, we have then opted to provide non-financial support as well. Other than this webinar, as a bank, we have then picked up on 8 key topics as a bank to support our SMEs on. And we've already started that with the first one that we had was business online. How do you get your business online? Some of us, like I mentioned, have always traditionally worked from our offices. We've always traditionally worked from, our traditional structured environments. But because it's a disrupted environment, we need to think about how do we take our business online? And we've got a lot of feedback and a lot of support and a lot of questions from the businesses. And we're happy to share that with you yourselves as an association to be able to support you in those conversations of how do you take your business online? What support do we offer you as a bank? And how do we guide you to share? Because sharing, as we always tell our children, sharing is caring. How do we support you to better deal with the environment that you are? And one of the things is being able to go online. So sharing in that environment has really helped out some of our businesses, start to provoke their thoughts around how do they move forward. The second conversation that we've had, and we're happy to share with yourselves, is leading in a point of crisis, as we found. Our very own MD, Jeremy Awori, came on together with Carol Musioka of Carol Musioka Consultants to speak to leaders, to speak to business owners on how do you lead in a crisis environment. Yes, you may be suffering as an individual, but you need to lead. You need to influence your organization. You need to influence your business to be able to move forward. What is the first step? And how do you test environment? How do you make sure that even you as a leader who may not have everything that it speaks to your business, your BCP, how do you start to lead your business forward? Yesterday, we had a conversation also about business continuity planning. And we also had experts who came in and had these conversations. As a business, as a bank, we also feel that it is important, as you have your own sessions, we will invite you, we will let you know when we're having our next sessions to ensure that we can have these joint conversations. We'll be having conversations around cost structuring. We'll be having conversations around women-led business. We'll be having conversations around how do you, those who are struggling with mental anguish and its support in that area, how do we support them better and move forward in that? And that speaks to our non-financial support as a business. How do we then better support you now and moving forward? I think I will not, like I mentioned before, it's a conversation that is long. I hope I'm provoking some of the things that, thoughts that you need to have. And I always say, you may think about it as an individual, but it's also important to know that you have stakeholders, you have partners who are willing to have those conversations with yourselves. We are so happy to provide relationship managers who sit within the business to come in and sit with yourselves and just have those individual proactive conversations, and also as an industry, how can we better support you in being able to move forward? Yes, there are financial solutions that we can provide you. There's restructuring that we can do in that area, but there's also non-financial support that we're willing to give. And if we can speak to that together, ladies and gentlemen, it is not impossible for us to beat this COVID environment that we find ourselves, because the truth of the matter is every business requires, and I think it's every business wish that they should not just hand it over to your children, but to be there for your children's children. That is the true test of time. And for us to come together, we are open to having conversations. Like I mentioned earlier, we have 85 branches open. We have branch managers who are so capable, who have been trained over the years and into the last year especially, over how to manage and how to support you in these conversations. The leadership of this bank is more than willing to come out and meet yourselves and make sure that even as you go through this pandemic, and there might be issues that we have not necessarily touched on in this conversation, but we are so willing to have those conversations to make sure that we fully understand your situation, you fully understand the risks you're going to, and how can we mitigate it together to ensure that your business continuity plan really speaks to how we are going to conduct business during this period and therefore after this conversation, or after this pandemic. So ladies and gentlemen, I will leave it at that, because I do know as we continue, I'm sure there'll be questions and I'm happy to take them on. But I hope in my little way, I've been able to provoke your thoughts around the things that we are doing as a bank, but also to give you a view of what we look at in terms of a business continuity plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. That was quite an eye-opening presentation. For those who are joining us, that was Elizabeth Wasuna Ochoa, who's the Business Banking Director at Absa Bank Kenya PLC. I would like to request all attendees, for those who have questions or comments, to just put them into the Q&A log that is there below your screens or smartphones. I think, Elizabeth, what you've really done is given us a lot to think about when we look at the kind of disruption that's happening. Because yes, people say that money makes the world go round, and capital is one of the biggest things that affects most businesses. So the fact that people may not know where the next operating cost will come from, of course, there's the angle of mental anguish. There's, of course, the displacement that you talked about. And the biggest headache, of course, is the lost revenues. Another thing that you mentioned that I would like to reiterate is the business continuity plan. There's a very simple way to look at it. We have the risk assessment, we have the impact analysis, and the plan that we need to lay out as business owners or entrepreneurs. Then there's also the implementation aspect of it. And of course, as we approach the end of this pandemic, which I'm sure we will, there's a need to assess. And definitely members and all those who have tuned into the webinar, that's one of the things we really need to do. Apart from preparing ourselves, we also need to have a very good assessment, or what we call a monitoring and evaluation framework on how we are going to deal with our situations, our businesses, etc. At this point, I would like to invite Nuru Mugambi to give us a presentation on the various products that Inuka, the Inuka Enterprise Program has. And this ideally should be a way to sort of trigger thoughts on how various consultants may be able to benefit from the Inuka program. So, Karibu Sana Nuru, over to you.
Thank you so much, Wilson. I'll ask Christine to share the slides, and we can go to the first slide. I'm going to go through a very quick presentation on the Inuka SME program. Can we go to the first slide? Thanks. I'm going to give a quick presentation on the Inuka SME program that we have. And I guess first off, just to thank Wilson and Mugure for having us on, to obviously for the ABSA team to share some real insights about, from a banking perspective, what they're looking at and how they can support customers, but more so how we can organize our businesses. So thank you, Mugure and Wilson, for the time. And then obviously, thank you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, by the way, offered to host this session. So she approached KBA and asked how she can help and how she can support the mentorship program that we have under Inuka SME. So we really thank Elizabeth and also the ABSA team for that. I was on that last AAK session, and for those of us who don't know KBA is the umbrella body of the banking industry. We run with advocacy for banks, and in the financial services sector overall. We also provide standards and develop standards, and then we support on capacity building. So Inuka falls under the capacity building aspect of KBA's work. And the whole idea is how do we provide that bridge between the demand and supply side of finance? So of course, the AAK members are the demand and the banks being the supply. And we always try to figure out how do we bring you two closer together? How do you provide that bridge? It's almost like, I'm sure, I don't know how many of you have read that book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, or is it the other way around? But anyway, it's almost like banks are from Mars and clients are from Venus. How do we make you all speak the same language and get on the same page so we can support sustainable economic growth? So Inuka is one of these activities that we do. If we can move to the next slide. The Inuka SME program is, first of all, it's a free program. It's a public service that KBA offers to the banking public, the clients, and it's sponsored by the banks, the KBA member banks. And we have 5 objectives under the Inuka SME program, and it's all very much aligned originally to the Vision 2030 blueprint, but over time aligned to obviously the Big 4 and the Sustainable Development Goals. And the objectives of the program really are to help transition our economy from an informal to a formal economy. I think a lot of us, obviously not the AAK members, but a lot of our industry is still very much in the informal space. When you look at how we trade, when you look at even the hospitality sector, agriculture sector, a lot of it is underpinned by informality. So the whole idea here under the first pillar of the Inuka program is how do we transition our actors from the informal to formal, providing them with the tools, helping dispel myths, and really improving their business capacities to formalize. The second objective, of course, is one that's near and dear to all of us as Kenyans, is job creation. How do we ensure that businesses continue to operate? And Elizabeth talked about some of these aspects about how long businesses operate for. So how do we ensure that businesses continue to operate and create employment opportunities? The third is access to capital. And probably here's why you're wondering, okay, why isn't access to capital number one? Based on research we have found, and including research by the government through the Ministry of Trade and KEBS, we have found that actually access to capital is not your number one problem as business owners. How you navigate your businesses, how you navigate the market environment, how you bypass competition and withstand disruption, those are your key concerns, regulatory concerns, market practice concerns. And then you have an issue around access to capital, whether formal or informal capital. So here we're obviously trying to create that opportunity to de-risk businesses so they can access formal finance through the banking industry. The third is value addition. So a lot of our sectors, a lot of our business owners need support in terms of their supply chain, their value chain, management and innovation. So we want to touch on that. And then finally, equitable opportunities. And that is really just talking about equity from where customers are based. So somebody in Marsabit, are they able to actively compete and participate in the economy as well as a business from Nairobi? When you look at the KEBS research around how our economy is structured nationally and how different counties contribute to our overall output as an economy, you'll find that it's very much leaning towards the big cities, Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, and such. So how do we create opportunities outside of those main hubs so people can participate in the economy? So those are the 5 focus areas and objectives of the program. We can move on. So what we did is we did a lot of research. KBA did research. We also looked at research by financial sector deepening. We looked at the KEBS research. We also talked to SMEs. And of course, we've heard a lot from social media in terms of the challenges that business face. So we designed this program with 7 modules. Entrepreneurship, of course, and this entrepreneurship module really talks about the aspect of moving from informal to formal. What is the value proposition from an entrepreneur to work in a formal space? Second, financial management. Really, this is a space where we talk about business continuity, financial plans, cash flow management from a basic perspective. The third, business and strategic planning, really ties in with the financial management course. The fourth is operations and value chain management, marketing and business, human resources management. We know that you as business owners start businesses not because you're passionate about management. you're passionate about what it is you're passionate about. So there are those nuances of running a business like HR management, navigating legal issues that might not come naturally for a lot of us. So it's important that we provide and equip you in these areas. And then finally, the legal issue in terms of what are those legal challenges that we need to help you navigate just to make sure that you're operating legally. We can move on. So this is just a real quick snapshot of some of the activities that we've been doing. You can see there in the center, KBA partner with the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and what we've been doing is training the chamber members. This program is not exclusive to the chamber members. Of course, that's why we're here today, because we also want to make sure that AAK members can benefit from this content and this knowledge. You can see here pictures from different business owners. We've worked with informal economy. We've worked with businesses that are run by persons with disability. We've been all over the country, really training and providing support, but at the same time providing that networking opportunity. So as much as you're learning how to run your business, we're also creating that environment and that framework for you to network with other business owners in your community. We can proceed. Okay, so far you can see we have trained quite a number of businesses through face-to-face and online training. The way we deploy the Inuka program is in partnership. So KBA partners with banks. For example, we're partnered with Gulf African Bank, DTB. We've worked with Equity Bank, Prime Bank, to train their members, their customers, but also to train the business community in general. I also mentioned that we're partnered with the Kenya Chamber. So we offer face-to-face training that is sponsored and funded by either the banks or by KBA. So it's a free service that we provide. KBA, furthermore, has developed an online e-learning platform, and I'll share with you the link in a minute. And the whole idea is you go online and you self-learn based on the module that you feel you need to enhance. And so far, in the year or so since we launched the program, we've been able to train and reach about 3,300 plus business owners. And we're very excited about the partnerships, and we always look for partnerships. So Elizabeth, I'm looking at you. We need to do a tie-in together. So we also offer online mentorship, and this is a new offering that we are doing because of the COVID environment. We realized that, as Elizabeth has also mentioned, and so as Wilson and Mukure, it's important that we continuously provide support. So far, we've hosted 4 online mentorship sessions. This is the 5th in the series. And we talk about different thematic areas. For example, the KBA head of legal and regulatory affairs, Raymond Molenje, held a very good session about, and he's also an HR practitioner. He formerly used to work for the Federation of Kenya Employers. So he helped business owners really think about the HR aspect. How do you manage redundancies? How do you engage your staff? What are the legal exposures that you face? From an HR perspective. So we had a very good session with Raymond. Francis Waithaka, who is excellent on digital marketing, helped business owners really think about what are the resources and what are those tools, those quick tools you can use to start online marketing, loyalty programs, so you can help enhance your business. We also had Annabelle really just talk broadly around business navigation, really touching on this issue about informal versus formal, how to continue your business. And then we also had Wahiga, and Wahiga is an awesome young entrepreneur, just kind of giving young entrepreneurs a sense of passion and really just encouraging them to continue pushing through this environment. So we're going to continue having these online mentorship sessions. My colleague Roslyn, who's also on the line, has been instrumental in making sure we curate these sessions. So I'm sure hopefully at the end of this forum, we'll get all your contacts and we'll be able to let you know the next time we're having a session. So another aspect we have in the Inuka program is an online marketplace. Now, the vision of this online marketplace is very much guided by what we've seen in other countries. We've seen in Latin America, there's a platform called the Connect Americas. And the purpose of Connect Americas is to connect business owners with each other, help them network with each other, so they can trade with each other, but also so they can tap global value chains. We've also seen, and Elizabeth talked about ITC and the She Trades program. ITC also has similar framework where they try to connect traders and women traders so they can access global value chains and so they can partner with each other. help lower their business costs, increase efficiency. So we're trying something similar where we're creating an online marketplace where we're curating and bringing together all the participants of Inuka and trying to help them market their products and services to each other, but also to create a critical mass that banks can start approaching to offer products and services to. So we're very excited about this marketplace. Again, my colleague Rosalind has been running with this. If we can move on. So it's not just me telling you that we're doing an awesome job. We're getting lots of positive feedback from those who are taking the course. Gladys B, for example, said she was very impressed to learn about the opportunities available to her, and also she was very thankful for the knowledge. Robert, who is also in the built environment, said that we left the greatest impression, the program left the greatest impression on him, and what was really important was that this issue about formalization, making sure that you expertly navigate those legal and regulatory issues, just so you're not exposing your business to risk. Japheth talked about how the course was easy to understand. And this is a very important feedback for us because we don't want to be very academic with this learning. We want it to be practical and it has to be real time. So you take the course, you learn it and immediately improve your businesses. So we're very thankful for all the positive testimonials that we've received. We can move to the next. So this is my last slide. So it's a call to action and a takeaway for you. If you can visit inukasme.co.ke, you'll be able to access the training. Please fill the registration form. The reason why the registration is designed the way it is designed is because based on your level of your business formality, it'll pick and choose which courses that it feels that you should really focus on. And then also it will help assign you to different programs that we have under the Inuka program. So if you go to the website, you'll be able to access the 7 modules I've just talked about, self-train. You'll be able to hear about the online mentorship sessions that I've talked about, and then also to participate in the online marketplace. So we really encourage you to engage, and we welcome the AAK members. I think that's it. I can pass it back to Wilson. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nuru. That was a very nice, clear, and very informative presentation. I'd like to once again ask those who may have questions or comments to bring them in, because now we're entering the Q&A session before we close in the next 30 or so minutes. But I think from my point and the notes I've been taking, I'll just pose a question quickly to Nuru. You talked about access to capital is not the challenge. The actual challenge is navigation of the market. Because you say we are a unique set of professionals, built environment professionals, architects, engineers, quantity surveyors, landscape architects, etc. What kind of engagement have you had with similar professionals in terms of advice and also helping them navigate their respective markets?
Sorry, what did you say? What help? Similar what? Sorry, I missed that keyword.
Or what kind of guidance are you giving similar professionals in the built environment using the Inuka program to navigate their respective markets? And also, of course, the end game is trying to look for capital, but of course, that navigation bit is what I picked out in your presentation.
Yeah, sure. So I think naturally people feel like the issue is money, right? So, but when you really ask the questions in terms of why is it you need the money, you realize that perhaps a business has been displaced by competitors. I always get intrigued when you drive on Gong Road. It's almost like you have an M-Pesa shop, and you have a butchery, you have a bar, and then you have a lumber, a hardware supply, and then it repeats all over again. So you then wonder, okay, that one M-Pesa shop or the hardware shop, when they say they need money, is that really their issue, or is it that they really haven't understood their market environment, understood their market, the competitive environment? Have they been displaced by innovation, for example? Those are the issues that will affect your cash flow, that will affect how you access customers, and the loyalty aspect. I think a lot of businesses right now are shocked that they don't even know where their customers are. A lot of restaurants don't even have loyalty programs to reach out to their customers to say, hey, we're back in business, come back to us. So they might feel that the problem is money, but really when you dig a little bit deeper, you realize it's about navigating the market, navigating competition, disruption, innovation, and the rising cost of operating your business. So what we are offering is the Inuka training program. I'm not sure if you're asking us to do more. I'm not sure what else you would like us specifically, if it's a pointed question. But the whole idea is how do we've created a capacity building program that's grounded in research, actually 6 years worth of research about what is the key issue that's affecting SMEs. And that's why the Inuka solution, we feel, is helping meet that gap. If there are any ideas about what else we can do, we're happy to take that on. But I guess this session is another example of how we're trying to create customized capacity building and mentorship engagement for professionals in specific areas.
Thank you. Thank you.
But we take on board any recommendations. If there's anything else we can do, we're happy to do it.
Okay. Actually, I have a certain perspective. Okay. Because as the association, we've been running a mentorship program whereby we look at grooming people from the time they're students to the graduate professionals. And ideally, we as the so-called established guys may not have a proper mentorship structure because, of course, we learn this practice through apprenticeship and, of course, the training we get. But when it comes to that actual business training and that business kind of thinking, I think I speak for many when I say that we actually don't have that exposure, and it'll be a very good thing for us to look at a way to partner. And I think your presentation was very clear on the kind of opportunities that are there. I think most people who have attended this session should spread the word and tell people that there's actually a way to get some simple training on the 7, like the modules you mentioned. There's entrepreneurship, financial management. We always joke with our colleagues and say most of us are amazing at design, at managing a project, but tell people run an office and look at your risk. And now we have Corona. It has actually exposed a lot of people. So yes, there's a big gap, and thank you. We're looking forward to see how we can partner with the Inuka program.
Great, happy to help. The mentorship is a key aspect. I didn't mention that also Inuka is modeled under the SBA, the US Small Business Administration's capacity building program. And one of the key things they do is the mentorship, which is why we felt it was an important component of the platform. So happy to see which other sessions we can do.
Thank you, Nuru. As I wait for more questions sort of to stream in, I would like to pose a question to Elizabeth. You talked about, we'll get into that, the displacement, but one of the key things affecting in light of the current pandemic is the loss of revenue and, of course, the unexpected costs that come with that. So what does the banking industry have to sort of cushion? I know there's some waivers which have been given in terms of maybe the existing loans and the like, but is there some sort of stimulus package, so to speak, like what the president announced, that can actually reach out to MSMEs?
Okay. Thank you for that question. And to be honest, Wilson, that is a key question that we're always asking our businesses, because whereas we find ourselves in our traditional avenues, you know, I look at a situation where you have businesses that have fundamentally been perhaps tailoring business, okay? And I'm just taking a very simple business. And they've been used to tailoring clothes and tailoring, you know, individuals and corporates and whatever it is. But in a disruptive environment like this, even if they came to us and said, look, you need more money to buy more machines, our question would be, for what? Now, when they have thought through their plan and they have a view of how the environment has changed around them, they'll be coming to tell us, we need more machines because we need to make more masks, we need to make more protective clothing. You can see how they have changed their business model plan and factored it to the environment that they're working in. This is a similar, and I know I've taken a very simple example, but this is a similar thing that we look and say, in every business, there is an opportunity to reinvent yourself. There's an opportunity to use the kind of the data that you have built on as an industry, as an association, to be able to reinvent yourself and make yourselves relevant to the environment, and therefore come to the bank and say, based on the changes that we've had in our environment, this is what the kind of support that we require. I look at some of the big corporates that we have, truly their environments have erupted. And they've come to us and said, look, we need funding because we know we need to be able to, it's like a stimulus package for our distributors and our suppliers and our stockists. Based on our strength, because we know the stockists and the suppliers may not be able to, based on our strength and based on the fact that we need this value chain, can you provide us with finance stimulus packages to provide our SME value chain? And therefore, as they they turn things around. They pay us, we pay you, or they pay you, we pay us. You know, we have a structured environment where we're able to work, and those sort of conversations have been welcomed. We look at some of the health industries who, you know, they've turned things around and said, look, we need support to be able to expand in this area or that area. We've been able to come through. The conversation is around assessing your environment, understanding your risk, changing things around depending on, you know, the environment that you work in, and we're more than happy to support. So I know it's difficult without a plan, and hence the reason why a business continuity plan becomes so critical before you get into an environment as this is. But even as you are, take time, like we have shared between you and ourselves, there's a lot of programs you can sit in just to give you, open your mind out of the areas, the structured areas that you operate in. There must be something that you can be able to do as a business to be able to, you know, endear yourself to the environment and be able to sustain you as you go through this difficult period. And as we come out to the other side, what it leaves you is, it leaves you wiser, more having a better view of the environment that you work in. So yes, we are supporting a lot of our businesses in being able to, you know, provide them financial support to do things slightly different from what they're used to, but it makes sense for us to be able to support them to do so. So yes, we have opportunity.
Thank you. I think another message I'm hearing from that is people need to think about how to diversify. That's something which in our industry, there are opportunities, and I'm sure there may be another debate for that. But for now, I think I'll go to one of the questions which have been posted by one of our members, Architect Eric Iganda. And he's asking, when you talk about risk, are you talking about risk to the bank or risk to the individual? For example, a farmer could get financing from the bank, but the risk of default in payment is that the rains fail or are too much. So I repeat, so when you talk about risk, are you talking about risk to the bank or risk to the individual? And his example is that of a farmer who could get financing from the bank, but the risk he's facing is default in payment due to rains failing or being too much. So I think I'll start off with you, Elizabeth, and maybe Nuru can chip in.
So thank you for that question. And it's a very important question because it's something that I deal with and we've dealt with consistently with our farmers, because I also have the agriculture department that we work with. And when we talk about risk, really, remember it's a risk that we are looking at how structured is your plan. Have you seen all the risks that we see? Because remember, you're not the only farmer that we deal with. We deal with various, you know, situations. Some of them are good, some of them are not good. And we try to share experiences and ask ourselves, have you thought about this? Because it's inevitable. Some seasons, yes, we do have rain. Some seasons we don't have. Sometimes we have too much rain. Sometimes we have too much sun. All these things are there. And when we pick out a risk like the rain situation, then we ask ourselves, do you know, for instance, that we have insurance? And there's a whole bank, bank insurance products and services that we can be able to provide you. It may not necessarily cover you completely, but it will help you mitigate some of the risks that you see in your environment. Because at the end of the day, even as we lend you the money, remember, it is stakeholder money. It's the money that you bring to us to bank for you to be able to then lend it out in a responsible manner, knowing that you know the risks. And, you know, in good times, it is fantastic. But most of the time when things go wrong, like now that we find ourselves in a situation of COVID, which was totally unprecedented, we've had to quickly assess our environment and say, look at the risks that we have now. Now you can't move. That's a risk in itself. Now you're exposing your employees. That's a risk in itself. Your business may close down for, you know, a period of time. The risks in your environment, you know, inform how we then make sure that we can mitigate those risks to protect the money of the shareholders and yourselves who bank with us. So risks essentially are from the environment that you operate in that we tend to review. And at the same time, also, we must look at it in as a business, because ABSA in itself, and I think I speak to most banks, it's a business and has to be continued. And for us to be here over 100 years plus, you know, moving from Barclays into a brand like ABSA, you know, we must have a very strong risk department that looks and tries to mitigate those and ensure that whatever we're taking on, you know, as much as we can is as mitigated as possible. Not totally eradicated, but mitigated. So yes, the risks normally are in your environment, but we also have to look at, you know, in our way, how do we mitigate the risks that we take on as a business?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Nuru, can you chip into that issue of the risk?
Yeah, sure. So it's just to kind of reinforce what Elizabeth said, that it's actually shared risk, right? So in the financial sector, you're both taking a stake on any financing that happens. The bank takes a stake and you take a stake. The bank stake is, as Elizabeth mentioned, they are lending other people's money. Banks don't have their own money. So they're lending money that is shareholders' funds. They're lending money that's equity that's come in from investors. Who expect a payback. And some of these investors, including the shareholders, expect payback for generations. If you think about pensioners and the pension funds that invest in banks, for example. So there is that aspect of the shareholder and investor risk. Also, from a depositor perspective, when we put our money in a bank, we expect the money to be there. So when we want to call our deposit. So there is that aspect of risk-weighted assets, right? So banks have to account for the risk that they take. Risk is actually monetized, and they have to account for that in terms of their capital. And then you on the other side, as the borrower, you're taking a risk, and not only just a business risk, but a personal risk, right? So you're taking a lot of entrepreneurs might have to divert family funds and personal wealth to the business if something happens to business, for example. So I think this issue about risk, to answer Eric, is it's really both, right? It's a shared risk that both the bank and the customer takes.
Thank you very much, ladies. We have another question from Architect Imran Will, and his is it's actually a comment. It's actually a party, not really a party shot. It's something to provoke thought, and actually there's a question at the end of it. So he starts. Regionally, financing loans has seen a very steep decline. And looking at developed economies, loans are offered at very affordable interest rates, as low as 1% or even to the negative. I think most of you are in the banking sector, finance, so you know, compared to the West, our loans are are quite pricey. So he asks, what needs to be done to see our financial sector get to this point where cost of financing loans comes much lower than it currently is? And his other question is, are there any incentives within the banks where we can attract international financials in projects and tap on the low interest loans available in foreign commercial banks? So we'll start off, Elizabeth.
I'm happy to start off, and then Nuru can speak to the rest. So in line with your first question, which I would like to be able to jump into, is that, you know, sometimes when you're in front of the camera, you can ask, your mind already wanders around and figuring how to jump in. Maybe Nuru can jump in before I think through to, you're on mute, unfortunately. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. So maybe I can give a broader answer, and then I'll get into the issue. So when you look at what's driving the cost of money, which is interest rates, you have to look at what is that opportunity cost. So when a bank takes a position to price a loan facility, the alternative to lending to businesses and individuals is lending to government. And there is this idea that lending to government is risk-free. So therefore, the bank will look at, okay, if I was to lend to government, what is the pricing around that versus lending to an individual? So what is the pricing and what is the risk? And oftentimes, there is that tension around allocating capital to government or allocating capital to private sector, which obviously carries a higher risk. A lot of the economies that we cite, for example, this 1% that we're talking about, a lot of the economies we cite, we don't take a second to look at what is the T-bill rate, what is the risk-free rate in those markets. In some countries like Japan, the risk-free rate is negative, it's minus. In Europe, there are many countries where the risk-free rate is minus. In Kenya, our risk-free rate is as high as 10%, it can even go up to 11%. In the US, for example, their risk-free rate is 0.2, or it's like under 1% or 1%. So that means if a bank is taking a position to lend to the US government or the government of Japan, it is so cheap to do that because there's a higher return and a lower risk. But when you take that capital and look at lending it to a business, it comes at a higher risk, so it's priced higher. So when we compare ourselves to Japan, for example, that has a negative risk-free rate, hopefully I'm making sense, to countries like Japan that has a negative risk-free rate, we're actually not comparing like for like, okay? Because we're not actually accounting for the actual cost of risk in that market versus the cost of risk in our market. Lending in Japan, lending in the US, their systems are completely interconnected. When you open a business, your business ID is tied to your tax ID, it's tied to your personal social security number, it's tied to your bank account, it's tied to your address where you live, it's tied to your tax returns. So the idea, and it's also tied to the credit reference system. So the idea of pricing risk is so precise in those markets. Whereas in Kenya, our members of parliament are trying to make it illegal to have the CRB. So pricing risk in this market is it's quite an expedition. So we're really not comparing like for like. So that's big picture. So what can we do? So we hear about this idea of government is competing with the private sector when it comes to accessing capital in this domestic market. That means that government is borrowing a lot domestically. And when government borrows domestically, they are a very attractive customer. They're crowding out the private sector. So what we can do, I think from a policy perspective, is really look at our fiscal policy, look at our tax efficiency, so that the government doesn't have to keep coming into the local market to borrow and crowd out the small businesses and private sector. So that's one of them. The other one is, and personally, I am concerned around the narrative around credit information sharing and CRBs. They are actually not a blacklist. They are a tool that we need to price risk. So we should not see this framework as something that works against us. It actually helps unlock access to capital for the private sector. So I think the two key things that we need to look at is at the fiscal level, obviously government's appetite for capital, and then also just our own personal views about certain systems and frameworks that ideally are supposed to help us understand how to price risk. In terms of the DFI, the Development Finance Institutions, yeah, absolutely. So a lot of these DFIs have a sovereign mandate, so they have a sovereign backing. So the government of Japan, for example, will allocate capital to like zero interest capital to JICA, for example, and JICA will lend either to Kengen or whoever. So there is cheap money that comes through the sovereign angle and direct foreign investment. Questions around the cost of this foreign exchange, because obviously a lot of it is dollar denominated and then it has to be hedged before it's lent locally. But yes, absolutely, DFIs are a key partner and an ally in helping to lower the cost of capital in this market. So I think we've seen many banks, and I know ABSA also works with some of the DFIs. We've seen many banks coming up with SME propositions, Equity Bank, KCB, Co-op Bank. A lot of these programs are back funded by DFIs. And the whole idea is to help lower the price of capital. But those credit lines from DFI still come at a cost because of the foreign exchange conversion. They're lending to us as a banking industry in US dollar, but we're onward lending to you in Kenya shilling. So there's aspects around currency risk, but at the same time, I think overall it helps lower the cost. So it's a very long answer to actually a very long question from Imran, but ideally, yes. We, number one, need to look at, when we're talking about interest rates, we need to look at like for like. We need to look at pricing on a like for like basis. So it's not accurate to look at Japan at negative interest rate and Kenya that's, you know, before the interest rate cap, average interest rates are about 14%. You can't compare the two because completely different market environments, completely different risks. In terms of what we can learn from the developed economies, I mentioned this importance of like the CRB framework and then the fiscal policy, so that it's aligned with promoting private sector access to finance. And then number three, I think it's just a reminder to all of us as the financial sector, we need to do more partnering with the DFIs to lower the cost of capital. Maybe, I don't know if Elizabeth wants to jump in.
No, I think, Nuru, you've really spoken well. I think it's a fair view to make sure that, you know, our members know exactly how we end up pricing. Maybe just to add that traditionally, I know banks in the past and, you know, have taken advantage of, you know, being able to to price accordingly. And they price risk depending on what it is they saw in a risk as risk in the environment. And of course, with the interest rate capping, then came to, the CBK came in and then said, look, we're going to try and control this so that, there'll be more access. And unfortunately, to begin with, because of that, then most banks shied away because they really priced a facility based on the risk and therefore the spread took place. But now with the capping, then, banks had to become more efficient and effective, and hence the reason the conversations around the CRBs that you've spoken about, helping us to just be able to manage that risk in a better way. Over the last 5-6 years, we've become better. Is there room for improvement? There definitely is. And it's driven industry to industry, I can assure you. Pricing is a factor of the risk that we see and how we've been able to mitigate, hence the conversation we had earlier on about mitigation of risks. So yes, we're getting better, and therefore it's a conversation that continues, and DFIs definitely come in to support us because they'll give us reasonably cheaper money. But like you've rightfully mentioned, there is a risk that we need to take as far as the foreign currency risk. So the opportunities are there, and even as an association, you have to say we've out to this DFI, we ended this to bank to DFI, have this conversation, support us. This is the support that we need. Those opportunities that are there, and hence as I began my presentation saying, it may provoke thinking, different thinking, out of the box thinking, and these are some of the things that we're willing to sit and discuss with the members of this association.
Wonderful. That's great. I think one of the take homes that from what both of you have said is that there's definitely need for a policy almost overhaul in terms of how we approach this. And of course, the market is one of the things which we cannot say we can control, but you can definitely do something and appeal to those in power, with the legislators, the top people in the banking sector, Elizabeth, to see how we can really try and cushion the Mananchi from the higher loan rates. But one thing which Nuru mentioned, which I'd just like to chip in, is that there's actually a very thin line between, yes, let's start a business. I've started a business. My name is registered under Wilson Mugambi. My business is called WM Associates. But those two, you never find them being linked to anyone, the individual, the company. And you find that, yeah, we'll have tax evasion or avoidance or what you may call it. And one of the things that our professionals keep grappling with is actually getting their dues in terms of their fees. Because you find that, yes, you've done a project and you agreed on certain fees, and it becomes a tug of war between you and the client. But what if your contract was actually tied in with your KRA PIN and the client's KRA PIN, and there's a way to actually make sure that all that is accountable? So there are no excuses. Someone has to pay, they have to pay, because if they do not pay, their project will not proceed, they don't get their approvals, and of course, there's a ripple effect. And yes, Western countries have perfected the game and tried to tie in everything. And I think, yeah, whatever we have started with the eCitizen platform needs to be taken 100 million steps further. We have a big potential. That's my opinion. But now I'll just go to a question which has been targeted to Elizabeth.
Sorry, if I could just say, we just have to, as citizens and individuals, figure out if we are ready for that, right? So are we ready for a completely interconnected system? So are we as tenants who live in apartments, are we ready for our landlords to be able to report us to the CRB because we're late on rent? Are we ready for, like you say, if we've got a contract and we don't pay, are we ready for those who provide that services to list us? And it obviously affects our credit rating. So it is a complete, like you say, it's a complete alignment of the system. But at the same time, I wanted to add that, the interest rate is the price of money, but the other twin issue is opportunity cost. So what we have found in the informal economy, interest rates are probably 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 10 times higher than the bank interest rates. And the reason why you're seeing that within the informal economy, there's a lot of money flowing, and a lot of the mobile loan products, for example, are thriving, is because people really understand this issue of opportunity cost. I need to buy tomatoes, so I can sell the tomatoes, so I can have dinner for my family in the evening. So that opportunity cost issue, I have a container at the port. If I don't clear it, I'll be paying X amount of demurrage every day. I need the money now. So there's that issue about the cost of capital, but at the same time, there's the issue about interest rates. So I want to encourage us to not just kind of focus on the cost of it, let's also think about that opportunity cost and let that help you guide on, is it expensive or not? So I just wanted to add that, yeah.
Oh, wonderful, thank you. Thank you very much, Nuru. I think now we're almost out of time, but there's one more question which has been targeted at Elizabeth. And this comes from Simon Kinuthia, and he says, in supporting professional practice with finance, some practices may not have the best records of projections, and this is about their financial proposals. So how do you as a banking sector come in to guide firms such that they're able to have viable financial proposals?
Thank you very much, Simon, for that question. I think it's a very valid question because by and large, as we interact with SMEs and other businesses that we support, we find that one of the key problems we have as we read through the financials that they put together, sometimes they're not put together in a manner, and like I think Nuru mentioned it, we don't speak the same language. And so as a result of that, we then tend to be frustrated, and in the frustration, we tend to, decline. What we have then done as a bank is we have constituted what we call a business club, where in that club, similar to what Nuru and her team is doing, is to educate the businesses as you start. What are the key things that we need to provide you? We've even gone a step forward, other than providing you the information and seminars and conversations based on webinars, especially now. We have then said, can we provide you with coaches, mentors to have you better able to manage? We've even brought in consultants to be able to support you in those conversations. And so as a result of that, we're finding that the more SMEs understand the environment that they're working in, because at the end of the day, you can run away from KRA, you can run away, but you end up being caught, and the cost of that being caught is a difficult one. And you want your business to be sustained over a long period of time. Many SMEs, I can assure you, about 80%, they have fantastic ideas. The question is, do they understand what are the key things they need to do or support that they need? And some of them are down to HR, human resources. How do you manage that human resource? And so we have conversations around that. We provide you with consultants, we provide you with mentors in that business club. So it's not, like I mentioned before, it's not a conversation just around the financial piece. The financial piece will come, but also, are you ready and prepared? Because these are conversations that you cannot run away from. And I know a lot of professionals, like I think you mentioned, Wilson, is that you're perfect in designing. Look at the lovely buildings that we have, the estates that we have around there, thanks to the professions that sit in your association. But then there's a cost, there's an opportunity where you need to understand how to run a business, and a sustainable business, whether you are there. Some of you have not taken holidays for a very long time. Sometimes I ask in our forums, how many of you can afford to step away from your business for 1 month and still, and without phone calls from your business? And those are the conversations we have with our people, with our clients, so that by and large, we give them a view. Some of them are family-owned businesses. The issues around family-owned businesses are about succession planning. And I believe the African culture, we know, does not allow us to talk about succession, because I don't know, for some reason, we think that the minute we have that conversation, we'll pop off. But the truth of the matter is, for you to have a sustained conversation, we give you ideas of what are the things you need to look forward to. Sometimes we even bring your children in and say, how do we, or your business, your structured business, people who are key in your business, bring them in and have conversations about how the banking fraternity is looking, or how do they need to speak, how do we speak to each other to be able to support your businesses. So in our business school proposition, we are partnering with so many organizations. We have USIU, Strathmore Business School. We have like-minded, like I know we'll definitely be having a conversation, Nuru, to ensure that we don't duplicate issues. Can we come together and partner and be able to support, the industries? We've had a group called Women, and I know this is something that it seems like a cliche at the moment, but the truth of the matter, women are a business unto themselves. And I know in your organization, in your association, you have women groups. How do you support them? We have then said, we talk to them slightly different to the way you speak to other businesses, because they're slightly different, unique issues that they deal with. We come together and we have those conversations. So in our business bank, business club proposition, it's a fantastic place for businesses like yourselves to start off with, get involved, be edified, be supported, be guided as we move forward. Because at the end of the day, we do know that you have the right building blocks. I think your business will be able to go beyond the generation that we find ourselves in today. So thank you for that question, Simon.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I think looking at the clock, we've run out of time, and actually someone says thank you. I can't see any other questions. So at this point, before I invite our Membership and Communication Manager, Lina Jamo Musibu, to give us a vote of thanks and to close us, I think I'll just ask for a parting shot, just a minute from each of you ladies. So I'll start with you, Nuru. What is your parting shot to We Building Professionals?
One sentence. Visit inukasme.co.ke. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you very much. Elizabeth?
Yes. I wish mine was that easy, but you know, for me as a bank, we are open to conversations. Like I mentioned, we have 85 branches across the country. Please engage with us. We have branch managers, relationship managers. Reach out to us on our social media. We're normally very good. We're very good at responding. I'll be happy to provide your association with contacts so that we can continue this conversation in any which way we can to make sure that you're better prepared based on what we know as a bank. Sharing is caring, as we say to our families. I think it's important as partners to really, really be able to move our business forward past this COVID environment. We just need to make sure that we have. So please feel free to interact with us, because it is in that interaction that we find solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our webinar. But before that, I would like to invite Lina Jamo Musibi, who's our AAK's Membership and Communication Manager, to just give a vote of thanks. Welcome, Lina.
Thank you, Wilson. This has been a lovely session. I'd like to thank our speaker, Elizabeth Wasuna, for a lovely presentation and generally managing to articulate pertinent issues in such a clear way. I'd also like to thank the whole ABSA Bank team that we have worked with in the background to generally make this event a success. I'd also like to thank Nuru Mugambi, Roslyn, and the whole KBA team and the Inuka SME team for their participation. Thank you, Nuru, for your contribution in terms of your presentation, and the KBA team for generally being part of the organizers and working together in good coordination. I'd also like to thank our members who have joined into this conversation. Without you, this wouldn't have been a success. Thank you so much. And yeah, the Council of AAK as well for making this opportunity and just generally making it available to our members. And also, I'd like to request us to continue with this conversation online under our hashtags, hashtag AAK webinar, hashtag Inuka SME, and hashtag business continuity. Thank you so much and have a lovely evening.
Thank you very much, Lina. Once again, thank you to our panelists, Nuru Mugambi and Elizabeth Wasuna. You've been very delightful panelists and very informative. And we look forward to expanding this engagement and enlightening our members. And to everyone who's tuned into the webinar today, we thank you very much. And stay tuned to our social media platforms, your emails. You will be informing you about the other webinars we have. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for a very good session and a wonderful webinar. Have a blessed evening. Asante.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.